Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got a pretty fun 10-game slate in the NBA tonight, Nate. There are a bunch of players sort of listed as questionable right now all over the board, so definitely want to make sure you're checking all of that out and staying on thelines.com, where we have all of that great content for you and we stay up to date on all this stuff. We also got a couple other videos up for you today. In this one, we're taking a look at the Warriors and the Suns, a pretty fun matchup out west. As I mentioned, a couple guys that we're trying to see if they are going to play, mainly Chris Paul tonight for the Suns, which affects a ton of what we're looking at here. So make sure to monitor all of that as you guys are getting these videos out. Also, like I said, like and subscribe. Check out the other couple videos. We're bringing you each and every weekday a couple videos and our player props that we also have up for you today. And on thelines.com is where you can get all that great written content, keep up to date with all of these injuries and who's coming in and out of the lineups, and use that great odds finder tool to go ahead and make sure that you're shopping lines to the best of your ability across these U.S. sportsbooks. Nate, let's go ahead and talk about these lines real quick and then talk Dubs and Suns.
Yeah, we got a nice 10-game slate here. This will be the nightcap, but looking at the other games on the board, we got Pacers +3 at Charlotte, Thunder +3 at Wizards, Wolves -6 at Orlando. Paolo Banchero's out there. -1.5 is Miami at Toronto. Both teams probably going to be without some key guys there, so steering clear. Boston is -3 at Atlanta. We break that game down for you. Totals at 236 and leaning under despite the Celtics explosion. The Bulls are +3 at the Pels, who are on a back-to-back after beating Memphis. So Zion didn't play last night. We'll see about tonight. Cavs are +4 at the Bucks. Jared Allen is out for them. Donnie Mitchell maybe going to return. Bucks still missing Drew Holiday. Might get Pat Connaughton back. Rockets are +9 at Dallas, who's on a back-to-back after handling business against the Clippers. The Knicks are on a road back-to-back. They're +3.5 at Denver with Jokic out due to health and safety protocols. And then we get to this game. Yeah, the Warriors now +1. It was +2 at first, and this was the look-ahead line. I said to Josh, like, okay, we're taking the Dubs here. First pick, most confident pick. All these teams do is clap back at each other. I mean, after the Suns just stomped on the Warriors early, adding to the Warriors' early struggles, I think now it's the shoes on the other foot. And now it's the Suns that are struggling without Chris Paul, who left early again in that loss at Philly. They've lost 3 of their last 4. Managed to hang in there against Miami, surprisingly, and I believe cover a 1.5-point spread. But Devin Booker fittingly stuffed on the last possession by Jimmy Butler. And now Klay Thompson, who sat out the Warriors last game, I think just to circle this one and prepare for Mr. Booker, who he got into it last time when they were blown out. And he reminded him several times that he has several more rings than young Mr. Booker. And if he has something left in the tank defensively, he's going to be all over Book right now. If Chris Paul's out and Book is getting extra defensive attention and getting, the rejuvenated Warriors defense overall as a team, right? I mean, they were just awful to start the season, but they've turned a complete corner, just stomped out the Spurs, who, even with their personnel playing really efficient offense these days. And so now in their last 4, they have the 4th best defensive rating. The bench is up to the 8th best defensive rating. Huge turnaround. I believe DiVincenzo's back in there to help out with that. Jordan Poole finally got his offense going on Jordan Poole bobblehead night, which is always a nice boost. So, I mean, I think the champs are back to being the champs here. I mean, they're clicking and they love, like I said, to come back and get Phoenix. Last year, I think they lost the first 2 in this series, and then they came back with a big win in December, early December. So I think we're about on the same timeline here, where Steph is just playing out of his mind, where the Suns' backcourt might run into some trouble. There's no Landry Shamet, no Cam Johnson to try to take some of that scoring load off. The Suns' offense has just not been there, except for that win against the Wolves, who they just own no matter what. They went 2 for 4 at the free throw line against the Heat in their last game. 2 for 4. I mean, when was the last time an NBA team had 4 free throw attempts? That's just like a complete lack of aggression, an inability to capitalize on what the Warriors were struggling most at, right? Which is keeping guys off the line. And then defensively, they gave up 15 threes to a Heat team That's not particularly good from beyond the arc. Caleb Martin, 5 for 6, wide open shots there, 6 trays off the bench for the Heat. So the Warriors obviously can spread you out, hit plenty of threes. I would look at their team total here. I think they're going to win, or even an alternate spread. Like if I was setting this line, I would probably have Warriors -3.5 or so. Wow. I mean, certainly if Paul's out, I think if Paul's in, maybe you get it back up to +2.5 or something, or you get more on the money line. But yeah, I'm taking Warriors all day in this one.
I love it. I love the confidence. I love the conviction. I love it all because what you said was to me when we were talking, and you were like, listen, we're taking dubs, and I was like, so we're getting ahead of the dubs, right? We're not basing this entirely on what they've done so far because they're 0-7 on the road, straight up and against the spread. So that's not why we're picking them to win this game. But there's been some things that have changed. There's been some factors that are coming into play here. I started looking at this game through the lens of Chris Paul's out, right? And just for the record, when he's out, they're not the same team. They haven't been for the last couple seasons, as we know. Much worse record without him. It's still a pretty good record because they were a force last year and had a lot more depth last year that you felt comfortable about as well. Not the case this year. In 10 games with CP, a 9.3 net rating and 108 defensive rating. They give up 23 free throw attempts a game, which is good. And 6-3, or I'm sorry, they have 23 free throw attempts a game with Paul and the way that he's distributing and getting guys open shots where they're getting fouled. He's getting by guys, he's dishing off, and that's a huge reason why they have so many free throw attempts when Paul is playing. 7-2 straight up this season with him. 3 games without him, and that's the last 3, -2.1 net, 122 defensive rating. That goes up 14 points per 100. 11 free throw attempts a game. That's 12 less over the course of the last 3 or 4 games without Paul when he got hurt against Philly, as you mentioned. And then, also without him, that defensive rating has just been the 3rd worst. Their true shooting is already down to bottom 5, bottom 6. Assist percentage goes way down. All the things that Chris Paul does, which is lead the teeth of the defense at the point of attack up top and be a pest that way on defense, and then on offense, get into the lane, get to his spots, get guys into their spots, get assists, get free throws. None of that is the case when he's not in there. And you mentioned there a lack of scoring. That means you need a lot more one-on-one scoring. You need a lot more guys that can score without needing much help. Cam Johnson would be that guy. You just give him the ball. He's 6'10". No one's going to block his 3-point shot, which he was shooting 40% from. Same with Landry Shamet, another great 3-point shooter. Obviously, Jay Crowder. We haven't seen him all season and probably won't. So missing plenty of guys now. And if Chris Paul's not in there, that's going to be a lot more illuminating. Then you look at the Dubs and what's happened for them. And the starting point for them is something I talked about earlier in the season with them, which was they're gonna play. They're doing this weird transition, right, where they're trying to be the first team in history that can seamlessly bring in young guys in a season where they're still playing their old guys, give them equals amounts of time, and then still win. And that's not the case. That hasn't been the case. That fourth quarter awful defense, and really allowing a ton of points, not being clutch, all that stuff. It's like they think they can bring Steph back in with 6 minutes left in the game, and that even if they're down by a few points, that they're going to be fine. And that just hasn't been the case this year because Steph also isn't getting the same level of help that he got last year, where all the conversation was around, well, Steph doesn't need to do what he did in the year before where he scores 35 a game because now he's got Dre and Clay and Jordan Poole's there. Damian Lee was there. Gary Payton II was there. None of those guys are there, and they're not playing as well. Clay, we're waiting on Clay. So all those things have led to them being 6-8 and horrible, absolutely horrible on the road, bad at defense. But that has changed in the last 4 games specifically. They've become the team that we expect them to be. All the necessary stats that they were awful at, they've gotten better, right? So before the last 4 games, their defensive rating was 116, 117, 28th in the league. Their bench was giving up the 6th worst defensive rating. They were allowing the most points per game and in the second most in the fourth quarter. That opposition 3-point percentage and their free throw attempts allowed a game were all awful. In the last 4, they turned it all around, right? They've got the 4th best defensive rating. They allowed the least points per game, the 8th least points per game, and the 8th least amount in the fourth quarter. Their opponent 3-point percentage percentage, 8th best now. 21 free throw attempts allowed, so that's about 7 less than they were. Good for 10th in the NBA. So, all these things. The offensive rating was fine. It was okay, especially because Steph is a one-man offense, second in the league this year in points per game. And you talked about it a little bit, 3rd best PER, all that stuff. But the offensive rating did get a little bit better, 3 points better per 100 in the last 4 games. They've moved up a bit. They were already pretty good at shooting, but they're now 5th in true shooting and effective field goal percentage, 2nd over the last 4 games or so. So they've really they've really, upped what they've got going on offense, getting a lot more open shots, Steph having to do a lot less by himself. And like I opened this whole, diatribe with, who's playing is huge for them because Kuminga's numbers minutes have gone down a little bit as he's not been able to show that he can stay on the court. James Wiseman is currently in the G League, which is huge for them because he has the 2nd worst net rating of any player when he's on the court. When he's off the court, the team had the 2nd best net rating. So he's just a clear detriment and currently a bust. So all these negatives by additions by subtraction with less Moses Moody, who also hasn't proven to be able to stay on the floor on defense, especially, and getting DiVincenzo back in the lineup for a few more minutes as he's missed a bunch of games recently as well. All these guys probably could have played in their last game that they blew the doors off the Spurs, including Clay and Dante DiVincenzo, et cetera. But they had this game circled, like you said. This is one that they're waiting for. I don't know that I told you I might want to take some Steph props, but if the team's going to come along and Jordan Poole is going to be half as good as 34 points in 19 minutes as he was on Jordan Poole bobblehead night, then yeah, you got to feel like he's got another splash bro at least, and Clay needs to come back out and back up that I got 4 rings talk for sure. So I'm with you on the Dubs. I'm going to hit an alternate spread right now. Right now I'm going to hit an alternate spread, and then I'm also going to see if Chris Paul plays and feel good about that as well.
Yeah, I think the prop I would take is Clay following that revenge narrative. I'm seeing Clay 4 threes in the win at plus 320. And he's hitting 4.2 on 11 and a half attempts in his last 5 outings here. So, I mean, with like you said, the addition by subtraction, getting more guys out there who know how to move the ball and play in Steve Kerr's offense, just resulted in the beautiful game outgunning the Spurs at their own kind of thing, right? 35 assists, 23 3-pointers in their last game, granted at home. But this isn't like your marathon 5-game East Coast trip that they just, completely flopped on. This is 1 game in Phoenix, short trip. Then they're back home against the Knicks before they go on a road back-to-back. So it's a big game, like it always is when these teams get together. And I just think the Warriors are starting to take off, and I think you can get ahead of it by capitalizing on this line tonight.
And that's what I want to do. If we're going to sit here and talk about knowing the sport, and I'm going to sit here and talk about watching every single Dubs game, we got to be able to predict a little bit. And the tide is turning. And I think if they hadn't just blown the doors off the Spurs and hadn't been playing as well as they are, this spread, even without Chris Paul, could be anywhere closer to 4 or 5 already. Just because of the fact that they've been so bad on the road. But yeah, that's not who they are, and that's not who I think they'll continue to be all season long. They will always be probably a better home team. Chase Arena has become an actual arena where there's some life in it, and those home games for the Dubs. But this isn't who they are on defense. And the key here is who's in the lineup now. We got our vets back for the Dubs playing, and a lot less time for those young guys, because 6 and 8, you can't keep messing around in a really solid West Coast and a really solid Pacific division as well. So that's all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Check out the other couple videos we have up for you today, including those play-up props. We'll look to stay super hot with you guys. And until we see you next, happy betting.